How many of you are looking to get a good job in the summer or and after graduation? Obviously. Today I'm going to talk to you about the informational interview I did with Guy Ducharme at the TD Canada Trust. First of all, I'm going to tell you about the steps that I took to choose my person. I originally started looking for an accounting person at the hospital and could not reach a person. Knowing that I am taking accounting, I wanted to stick with that, so I then tried another, one of Canada's largest accounting firms in Kingston, Collins Barrows. Again, too busy. So I went to the next best thing, which is the bank. I am glad that I chose this because this gentleman was very easy to talk to and willing to give information. I went in with the mindset that it's a professional business. I need to dress appropriately. I need to be prepared. So I took my nice looking black book, wrote down my questions, directed to the bank with spaces to fill in, and also asked him if I could record while I was there. He is Guy Ducharme at the branch. He is the branch manager at the branch in the RioCan. And he has a background in economics. He has a degree in economics from Queen's University. He started with a finance company through a friend, and they transferred them around a lot. His last transfer was to Cochrane, Ontario, and he said, no way. So he decided that he was going to grab a newspaper, and there happened to be an ad for TD Bank at the time, and he applied and got the job. Funny story was that he was trained at a branch in his hometown by a gentleman. He then was transferred and went back 18 months to that same branch and was his boss. It was a little hard, he said, but it's what you do when you get in the door. When I asked him if this was what he wanted to do, he said no, not at all. He didn't go to school thinking he was going to work for a bank one day. He got into the organization and realized that was what he wanted to do. He loves working with people, loves getting up every day, and just the people aspect. It's a great place to work, and he would think it would be a little harder for any student once they graduate to get into a business. It's key to get into the business because once you get in, then you yourself can determine where you want to go. A couple times he actually said, you know, education gets you in the door, but it's what you do once you get in there. There are times when you get into an organization, you'll say, you know, this is not what you want to do, and you'll switch. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, it's always what you do once you get in the door, and you control your own destiny, so to speak. At the time, there were no specific credentials that he required. But today is different. That was 30 years ago. Now, when you go to apply for a job, you'll get aptitude questions, situational questions. You're then evaluated on how good of a fit you would be with the organization. The credentials he currently has to upkeep include a mutual funds license, which requires him to maintain 21 hours of education a year. He has a branch officer credential, which is he's to review several other branches, and that requires at least 15 hours of education a year. And the branch compliance officer, again, requires 15 hours of education per year. I asked him what his main duties were as a branch manager, and asked him to sum it up because, you know, with a manager there's so many different things. So the 4 key areas was service at the front line, so when you're talking to the teller, the advice team, so the consultants that you're talking to when you go to the bank, so that, you know, if you want to buy a house or do a retirement plan, he wants to make sure that the advice team is giving you the advice that you need. Compliance issues, so with federal government regulations, there's so many changes every year, and there's more and more, so he is responsible for that. And the branch results in his district. asked him, with the employees that he has and different personalities and cultures and values, what he finds the best way or most effective way to communicate with his employees. And he said that one-on-one is always good. He does, they do send out emails, they have weekly meetings where they go over the emails again, but it's his responsibility as a senior leader to make sure that everybody understands the information that they're giving. And one of the examples he used was like the Aeroplan card. You know, you have to be able to tell people, oh, you can get an Aeroplan card and what it's all about and what the fees are to get it, things like that. So whenever those things come up, it's his responsibility to make sure that they know what information to give. He will then go around and quiz people every once in a while with written quizzes, verbal ones. They do service observational coaching and conversations investment coaching. So they'll actually stand behind a teller and see them do 3 services in a row and then comment on what they did well and what they need to work on. Same with the conversation investment coaching. They'll actually sit in and make sure that they're using the right terminology and plans for the bank when talking to investment clients. I asked if there was a form of communication that he shied away from or avoided, and if so, why. He kind of hemmed and hawed for a couple seconds and then said, no, personally, I don't shy away from any communication, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. And the reason being is that there are times when you hire people for an organization and they don't fit. He's actually had people come back and say, thank you for having this conversation with me because now I'm doing the job I wanted to do. You have to be able to wake up and say, yeah, I want to do this job for the next 30 years. Or in 30 years, I'm still going to be happy with this job. You need to do something you love. I asked if when they hire, do they have any pet peeves? We've gone over the spelling mistakes, you know, the attire, things like that. He said there's not really a pet peeve, but it is a professional environment, so don't be showing up in track pants. If you want a job, then show up the way you would every day for work. When you show up in track pants to drop off a resume, the first thing that he's thinking of is that you're on unemployment and you're going back to say I dropped off 12 resumes to stay on unemployment, because that is what is required of unemployment. He was very straightforward. He said when he looks for someone to hire, he's not looking for somebody to be a teller or somebody to be an investment consultant. He is hiring somebody to be the next president of the bank, which I think is amazing, because a lot of people are afraid of that. They're afraid if they hire somebody that will do a better job than them, then they could take their job. So by him doing that, it's making it open for people to be great. He's going to try and figure out how dynamic are you. You know, are they people-oriented? Because obviously in the bank you have to be people-oriented. You're dealing with people every single day. I asked him about the balance between his work and home life, and he said it's a big difference, because now it's a big thing for us, whereas 30 years ago it was you worked hard and you put in lots of hours and you were paid for that. That's how you got your promotions. Now it's the results that you bring into the organization. So when I asked him about that, he said he could pull some performance appraisals earlier in his career and they all say the same. Very hard worker, puts in long hours. He does that now, but it's because of his lifestyle. His children are older. It's just him and his wife. So he puts in 60, 70 hours a week, but he doesn't complain about it because he loves what he does. One of the things, and some of the things that he's doing to balance his life is, you know, golfing and going for trips, just like you would on weekends now. I asked him, what advice would you give that may help us in planning and preparing for our future? And the biggest thing he said is you have to have the ability to sell yourself. Some people cannot do a good job at that. You have to have the ability to go into a business and say, I'm here to get a job with your organization, and I'm going to be the best person that you've hired in the last 10 years. And you have to go in with that frame of mind. And the reason for this is organizations are willing to wait now. There are 15,000 people out of work in Kingston. And if he put an ad out right now and 20 people showed up and none of them were good for the job, he would repost. He wouldn't just hire somebody because he needed somebody, he would wait. He would try Workopolis or any other form, but yeah, they're willing to wait. They want the best of the best. The biggest thing he said for a student today is to find out what they like and go in and talk to somebody that is in that role. If you want to work at Home Depot, go and talk to a manager at Home Depot. Find out the pros, the cons. If you want to work at the bank, he's more than willing to have a student come in and he'll tell you the pros and cons, you know, what the benefits are. Because if you go and think money is everything, you go get a $20 job, a $20 an hour job with no benefits, and it's so much better if you went and got a $15 an hour job with benefits, because the price is different. It's just astronomical for benefits nowadays. The other thing is they've had situations where they've hired people that are not people friendly, so they've put them in non-customer positions. Well, those are going away. They're becoming redundant, and then people are like, well, what am I going to do now? Because they don't want to be that teller at the bank. They don't want to have to tell people things. If they were hiring for a teller, there's a couple things that they would look at. One is, would they look, do you have retail experience? And the reason for that is you would have quotas within a retail store. And the second thing is you don't mind the hours. Saturdays and Sundays are just another day. Whereas they have people that work for the bank when they were only open 5 days a week. Now they're open 7. And people don't like that. So if you've worked retail, it's a good step to get into the bank. So don't think just because I worked for a retail store that you don't have the opportunity to work for a place like that. You can. They do personal developments, and they help their employees all the time. And every year they have to continue to do a new personal development, and they're willing to help that. The thing that we have to realize is that we have to do anything possible to get in the door, whether that's visiting the human resources 2 or 3 times a week. Don't just drop off a resume and say, oh, they're not hiring today. You need to follow up. Go back and back and back, because it shows initiative. Are there any questions at this time? No? One of the main things that stuck with me is that he said, education gets you in the door, but once you're in the door, it is all up to you. It's how far you want to go, and you can do anything you want to do. In my current career, I started with an employment agency, as an associate for a project manager. I worked my butt off. I then had him retire, and they put me in as the interim, for now, project manager. I proved myself for that. As soon as a job came up, I applied for it and got it with the company. So now I'm full-time with the job that I wanted. So no matter how you have to get in that door, get in the door. To thank him, I know he golfs a lot in the summer, so I'm looking actually for a thank you card that has golf bag or something on the front, and we'll be sending him a thank you note, because this information is like real life. And that is everything I have for you today.